Panoramic images, one of the things which I found very popular within my classes, and I suppose everybody wants to put a nice image up on the wall, so I thought I'd put some tips together as well as just a short tutorial on how to do it in Photoshop. So first and foremost, here is my tips. My first one is keep things straight. So I'm talking about keeping your camera, tripod and everything else, keeping the whole thing horizontal. Normally I do a walkthrough before taking the shot from left to right or right to left, depending on how you shoot, just to make sure that everything is straight. It doesn't always work out, as you'll see from my example a little bit later on, but you'll get the idea. Use a tripod. I think that's kind of obvious. You do need to use one. It keeps things nice and tight, and you do need to have everything lined up for the software to work properly. Shooting with a 50mm lens and over. This is all about keeping perspective, really. If you are using under 50mm, then you run the risk of the software not being able to detect or being able to do a good job. So using a 50mm or over will give you that situation a lot better than what it would be if you left it under. The other one is shooting in portrait style. So everyone's assuming, especially my new classes, will always shoot landscape in a landscape mode, as opposed to shooting in a portrait style, which obviously will then give you more data to work from later on when you come to edit. Don't change the exposure settings. So what you're needing to do is find yourself an exposure that you're going to use for the shot, i.e. aperture, speed, white balance and ISO, and make sure that you don't change it as you go from left to right or right to left, purely because it will mess up the whole panoramic experience when you come into software. Switch off your autofocus or your auto ISO. Now that's important because with autofocus, obviously, if you're trying to take a scene, last thing you want your lenses to be doing is jumping around and trying to focus into something else as you move the camera from left to right or right to left. Same with ISO. Obviously, the lighting will change from left, from wherever you are, how you're shooting it. So your ISO values will change also, which in turn would mean that will give you completely different setups. So you don't want to have either one of those switched on. For the metering of the image, so this is aesthetically, if you're looking at it, I always, and I'm not suggesting this is the hard and fast rules, but I always use whatever my point of interest in the shot, if it's a boat shed or whatever it may be, use that as the point meter, and so that everything else just is like an accessory to it. In low light, use a cable release or self timer for obvious reasons. If you're going to press the button for the shutter release, then ultimately it could cause you a little bit of problems if you've got shaking there. So let's eliminate that by using a cable release or self timer. And this last one is really and truly just to help you when you pull it up, you pull the images up in your computer later on. If you've got a blank shot in between the sets of shots, it just helps life so much easier. It means that you don't have to wonder where one shot starts and the other one finishes, or where one set starts where the other one finishes. Okay, let's go over to the Photoshop and have a look at the way to do this. So I've got a folder of some images taken at Church Point in Sydney, New South Wales, and I'm going to put those together. I'm not quite sure how many images there are, but we'll work that out in a minute. And the first thing I'll do is I'll come in to go File, Automate, Photo Merge. Now this is the easiest way of doing it. Yes, you can, for those of you who understand how to use Adobe Bridge, you could go that way, but obviously you can do it via Photoshop directly. So this is where we are now. When you click on that, you'll get this box, which is the panoramic dialog box, with various different ways of putting this thing together. Generally, I leave it on auto, and I'm not, you can experiment as you go through with all the perspectives and cylindrical and so on and so forth. But I'm going to leave it on auto because it works very well on auto. Source files. Where's the files? So if I go browse, my system's thinking about it. Here we go. and it goes in, and it's going into a folder which has got some images here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 images. All of them done in the panorama style. Let me just click on one so you can see. There you go. And so we're going to put all these 8 in and say open. Oh, there you go. So now you've got all 8 loaded into the system. I'm going to blend together all the images as I want to make sure. There's not going to be no vignetting in the shot, so I don't need to worry about that. Any distortion, let's make that corrected. So just if there's any dramatic distortion corrections to be done. So that's it. As soon as you've finished all of that piece, all you need to do is press OK. Now this whole process takes a little bit of time. So this is the point where I'll go off and make myself a cup of tea and come back to you. So I'll be back to you shortly. Okay, so back. Depending on how powerful your computer is, you may have it may take a bit of time, but this one took about 3-4 minutes to do all its aligning. So don't be impatient. You've got to give yourself some patience. Go and make yourself a cup of tea, like I said, and come back. It will take some time, especially if you're working with sort of 7, 8, 9 images or so. So it's just at the final stages now. We're just doing the blending part of it, as you can see on the screen, and hopefully we'll have something to show you. Like I said, it all depends on how new your machine is. My machine I'm using here is a couple of years old. The newer ones are much more powerful and probably would whiz through this a hell of a lot more quickly. Here we go. Okay. Alright, so all the layers are up, and there you have it. There's a panoramic of 8 images at Church Point. Now, as I said initially, this was one of those weird ones where I thought it was straight when I looked at it initially, but it's obviously not. So you need to do some straightening. That's the first thing I will do. So go to the crop tool, and if you're in the crop tool, you'll have the straightening bar, which is on here. I'll show you in a sec. Let's line this up. Right. So there's your straightener. If you click on that, and then I'm gonna take a stab and say from here to there is straight. So it will automatically, as you just saw, it will automatically just switch the actual image around for me. Okay, happy with that. Okay, here we go again. So that's cropped. Happy with that. Next thing I'm going to now do is look at doing a crop of 2x3 or 3 by, here we go, 3 by 1 rather, which is the general cropping distances that we use. But let's just come out to here. There you go. And a little bit out this way. And I think we're cropped. Just going to do a nice crop on that. As soon as that's finished, looks like we're good to go. Let's just see what happens now. Fabulous. Right, so at this point, got a bit of sky, happy with the water there, which is what I wanted in the shot. And this is what I saw when I was at Church Point. So this is a panorama. Last thing to do then is to collapse all of these together, because what you don't need to, I mean, obviously these are what made up the panorama, but you don't need to have them anymore. So I'm going to do a Control or Command E, and that should collapse everything up, and it does beautifully. And at this point is where you now start to do some photoshopping, depending on what you want to do. So, you know, my usual sort of thing to do at this point, just to help you along, is Control U. Actually, I'll do a copy first, so make a copy of the whole thing, which is there. Then the Control U or Hue and Saturation. Bump up my colors a bit. Put more colors into the shot itself. Happy with that. So okay. So again, you can have a look at that. That's before, this is after. So it's a little bit more richer in color. And then maybe you want to sharpen it a little bit. So I would normally do a high pass shot because I quite like using high pass. So it's Control J. Give me another copy, and then I'm going to put the filter on there. So filter, other, high pass. This is a strange one. If you see it, you probably go, oh, that looks awful, but it's really good at what it does. It does a nice sharpening job. So normally just before the colors come in, I like to sharpen it about there and say okay, and then say okay. And once you're done with that piece, come up to this box here and go into overlay. So you want to overlay it, and there you go. Gives me a lovely sharp edge. So if you want to look at it without, that's without, that's with. Okay. Lastly, give myself a little border, which we did in an earlier video. I'm just going to put myself a 1% on this one. Nothing crazy. Purely because I just really want a little white line going around it, and say okay. And I've got to give myself a white border. Let's do it this way. Hopefully that will fill in for me. Yes, it does. Fabulous. So there we have it. There's my panorama done. I'll change the screen so you can have a look. How's that? Pretty happy with that. For any questions on it, please just drop me a line. But that's how you would do a panorama. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.